Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this session on pancreatic cancer, diet, and you. My name is Jeni Jones, and I'm one of the specialist nurses working here at Pancreatic Cancer UK, and I am working here for the past almost 15 years. Prior to that, I was an oncology nurse specialist working in a very busy chemotherapy unit, and I also worked in clinical trials. This evening, we will be talking about what does the pancreas do? What diet and digestive symptoms can people with pancreatic cancer experience? How can you manage these symptoms? What is pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy, or often known as PERT? And who needs to take it? What foods should I eat and what should I avoid? Answering your questions and letting you know where can I find further support. We'll be welcoming a specialist dietitian and one of my fellow specialist pancreatic cancer nurses to talk with you about this very important topic this evening. Now, with the housekeeping out of the way, and just before we begin, I'd like to introduce Sarah and Nicci, who will be joining me this evening. Nicci is our clinical lead here at Pancreatic Cancer UK, and she's one of my fellow specialist nurses who I work with on the support line. Nicci, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. Thanks, Jeni. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad so many of you have been able to make it this evening. I'm Nicci, and I've been at Pancreatic Cancer UK now for around 6 years. And prior to that, I worked in a busy city centre hospital in oncology, supporting all patients with different types of cancers. And then before that, my background was I started my career as a district nurse and then went on to specialise in palliative care. And I'll hand over to Sarah.
Thanks, Nicci. My name's Sarah. I'm a specialist HPB dietitian. I work at Manchester Royal Infirmary. I've been working in the area of HPB, so that kind of encompasses liver and the pancreas and the gallbladder for the past couple of years. Yeah, I'm one of the main speakers today.
Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us this evening. Sarah, without further ado, I'm going to actually hand back to you because you are, as you said, leading our session this evening. But we will also contribute, Nicci and I, hopefully. We'll have something to say and to contribute to the evening session as well. And please don't forget, if you have any questions, to submit them to the Q&A tab. And any other thoughts you'd like to share, we'd welcome those through the chat function. Sarah, over to you.
Thank you, Jeni. So as Jeni said, there'll be a little chat at the end of each section. So each one of those questions we're going to answer this evening. And there'll be time at the end for more questions as well, if anyone wants anything re-explaining or anything more specific. So what does the pancreas do? That's the first question we're going to answer. So this is a diagram, a very sort of simplified diagram, but it's really great because it's a lot easier to see of what your HPB area looks like. As I said, it's that liver, that gallbladder, and that pancreas. So you can see the purple sort of fluffy cloud looking thing there is your pancreas. It sits just under your stomach and just under your liver and right next to your spleen and your gallbladder. So that's there. In terms of what it does, the pancreas has two jobs in the body. One is blood sugar control and one is producing digestive enzymes. So medics will sometimes talk about the endocrine and the exocrine function of the organ. It sort of means acting on something or acting on itself. So the blood sugar control is acting on something else. So the blood sugar in your blood and the digestive enzymes are acting on themselves. So the digestive enzymes are released when you eat and they help break your food down. So your food will arrive at your stomach in the blue section. It will get churned up and mixed with those stomach juices to help break food down. Your food then gets released into your duodenum, so that's the first part of your small bowel, where it then gets mixed with those digestive enzymes to help break your food down further. If you have cancer, your pancreas will not work properly, and both of those jobs might be impaired. So the blood sugar control might not work as well, and those digestive enzymes might not be produced either at all, or they might not be produced enough to do the job they're supposed to do. So if you're not producing enough of those digestive enzymes, that's what's called PEI, or pancreatic exocrine insufficiency, which is a very fancy word for your pancreas not working properly. But you might hear your doctors say things like PEI at various points. So it's always useful to know what these words mean. So before we go on to this next question, I'm just going to invite Jeni and Nicola to add in anything if they would like to.
I think one of the main things that I have noticed working here is that the pancreas is such an amazing organ, but a lot of us don't realize how amazing it is and the amount of things that it does in the background till something actually goes wrong with it. So, it is quite a remarkable, it works away in the background. It's so many important things for us, but we don't really know that it is so important, as I said, until something actually starts to go amiss.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Jeni, and I think if people have heard of the pancreas and its role, they'll often know about diabetes and the endocrine function, but it's the exocrine function, I think, that people don't often know about, which plays a huge role in digestion. Yeah.
Great, thanks guys. So now we're moving on to what digestive symptoms people with pancreatic cancer might experience. And again, this is all related to that PEI, that pancreatic exocrine insufficiency. So if your pancreas isn't working properly and your food is not being digested properly, these are some of the symptoms that you might have. So you might have feeling sick or being sick, particularly after meals. You might have pale, greasy poo that floats in the toilet. You might have tummy pain that particularly gets worse after eating, although sometimes it can get worse a while after eating as well. A lot of people say they feel very bloated, so they'll notice their tummy looks a lot bigger than it should do, or they feel a lot more bloated, even if it doesn't look bigger than normal. You might notice more reflux or heartburn than you have experienced before, again, particularly after meals. Lots of people say they have more wind than normal, so burping or farting or having a very loud, noisy stomach. So some people say it's a little bit like a washing machine kind of noise, just lots and lots of gurgling. You might have diarrhea or urgency to suddenly go to the toilet, where you might never have had that before. And then most people will probably feel more tired than normal. They might lose weight even if they're eating well and they don't know why. And their blood sugars might be more erratic. They might be more up and down, or they might be more likely to have low blood sugar more regularly. So again, all of these symptoms will be because of that PEI, that pancreatic exocrine insufficiency, your body not breaking food down well enough. So those are all the different symptoms that we can have. So we've now got a poll, which I believe should pop up on your screens in a minute. And the question is, which of the following symptoms have you or your loved one experienced? So feel free to click any that you'd like, and we'll give it a minute, and then we can have a look at the results. So again, some people that have these are diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Some people may never have any of these symptoms. Some people might have every single one of them. Some people might have a range of symptoms. Oh, there we go. I can see, I hope everyone can see that the voting's come back in now. and I'll invite Jeni and Nicci to sort of comment on this with me. But it looks like lots of people are saying sort of that pale, greasy poo, that tummy pain, that wind, that tiredness.
Yeah, these are all really common things that we hear on the support line every day of symptoms that people are experiencing. And what's interesting there is often when we're talking about PEI, people often think that it's just about those pale, greasy stools, but not everybody will experience that. But that doesn't mean that your pancreas is functioning properly, or that you don't need those enzymes, which we'll go on to talk about. So that's really interesting.
Absolutely. And I think, it just goes to show the percentages of people having most of these symptoms are quite high. So this will just really reiterate what we hear and what we know about the pancreas and how it has really got a detrimental effect on when it goes wrong, and there aren't enough of those important enzymes, just how unwell people can end up feeling. And these are not symptoms that are, easy to just eradicate straight away. They take a little bit of tweaking to get things right, but they can be helped significantly. So rest assured, help is at hand, folks.
Fab. Thank you very much, guys. So moving on, as Nicci said, we'll be moving straight on to pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy, or PERT, which is what Jeni mentioned at the beginning. And we're going to also talk about how to take it, when to take it, and why it's important as well. So lots of people will hear the term PERT thrown around, maybe in their doctor's appointments, but we're just going to talk about what it actually is. So lots of people will have heard it called different things as well. So the most common medication brand in the UK is Creon, but there's also Nutrizyme and Pancreatic V, which are just different brands of a very similar product. So what the capsules actually are is they replace that function of the pancreas that's not working properly. So they're helping as a replacement digestive enzyme to help your body break food down properly when you're eating. So it's doing one of the jobs of your pancreas. Okay, so as it says on the slides, there are different brands and different sizes of capsules available in the UK. So most people will be on the Creon 25,000 unit capsules. But lots of children or adults that have lots of problems with swallowing might be on the smaller capsules, the 10,000 unit capsules. Some people don't get on very well with this for various reasons. So they might be on Nutrizyme instead. And the Pancreatic V, the powder, that is only prescribed in people that have feeding tubes to help them break down the feed that goes down those tubes. So it's not something that you'd take orally, that you'd swallow or you'd add onto your food, although sometimes this does get prescribed in error like that. So if that has happened, I'd just recommend talking to your pharmacist or your GP. There are shortages of these medications, as I'm sure lots of people on the chat are aware. Those shortages are due to last until 2026, but there are now alternatives. And different ICBs, so different integrated care boards across the country, will be recommending different products that are to prescribe as an alternative if they do run out of Creon or Nutrizyme. But that would all be dependent on what area that you live in at the minute. And thank you to Nicci, who has just put the nurse support line in the chat. So, and they can always support you if you have any problems getting hold of the pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy medication. So we're on to our next poll, which should be popping up in just a second for you. And the question is, are you taking pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy? So I'll give everyone a minute or two to ask that. And then as before, Jeni and Nicci will be jumping in to sort of talk about the results. There we go. So I hope everyone can see the results have just come through there now. Looks like 75% of people have said yes, they're having Creon, and 22% have said no, and 3% have said sometimes.
That one's an interesting one, isn't it, Sarah? Just caught my eye. You know, Creon is not something that you can take sometimes. It is something that you must take for every meal, every snack, and every milky for as long as is necessary. It's not like an antibiotic where you have a course of it and then everything is fine and you finish that course. It's a sort of lifelong medication. So
I do wonder if maybe some people have put sometimes because of the stock issues, which of course may be a reason if someone is struggling to get hold of PERT. But yeah, like Jeni said, you know, it's not something that you would come on and off.
Great, thanks very much, guys. So moving on to who needs this medication, because sometimes there can be a lot of confusion around who needs to be prescribed this, who needs to be on it full term. So anyone diagnosed with pancreatic cancer at any stage should be on pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy as soon as they get a diagnosis. So it's really important, as Nicci and Jeni have said, that anyone who's diagnosed with pancreatic cancer should be offered the digestive enzymes. Some people, most people who have had surgery to their pancreas will also need digestive enzymes. Some people will not, because they, for whatever reason, they have kept the part of their pancreas that does this job. So not everyone who has had surgery will need it if they've had a partial pancreas removal. Anyone who has had a Whipple's procedure or something similar, sometimes it's called a PPPD, which is a similar type of surgery, or a pancreaticoduodenectomy, which is the fancy way of saying it. Anyone who's had that kind of surgery should be on the digestive enzymes, but not everyone who's had surgery to their pancreas needs to be on it. And then the final person who probably needs to be on the digestive enzymes is anyone with significant pancreas damage. So that tends to be anyone with pancreatitis, so chronic pancreatitis, for example, where their pancreas is damaged for whatever reason, they will also need to take digestive enzymes. So before we move on to our last section about digestive enzymes, there's another poll which should be popping up for you in just a second. And it's, how confident do you feel about your understanding about how to take PERT? So how confident do you feel in how you take your digestive enzymes? How confident do you feel when you take it? How many you need to take? That kind of thing. We'll give everyone a minute or two to answer. And then as before, Jeni and Nicci will hop on just to discuss the findings of the poll. Okay, so everyone should have the answer to the poll on their screens now. And I think, forgive me if I'm wrong, Jeni and Nicci, but that's not a very surprise to me, the numbers we're getting. People feeling not very confident.
Yeah, I think one of the things about Creon is it's a tricky, it's something tricky to get used to, and we don't treat it like a normal medication in that, you know, you're prescribed one a day for however many days. It can go up and down depending on what you eat, and you have got the free will because you can't overdose on these as a medication. They're more like a therapy. And I think that can be quite confusing for someone to get used to. It can be really tricky. So those results don't surprise me, actually.
I think it's good to see that there's quite a level of confidence and somewhat confidence. So I think that's good. yeah, so I think we can really work on that. Hopefully, after tonight, people will feel, a little bit more, confident in terms of handling their own pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy. And that's what we want to see. We want to see people, having that confidence and being able to ascertain what they need to take when, and being able to just, see the symptoms improve.
Great, thanks, guys. So the next slide we're going to talk about is actually how do I take it. So this is advice for if you've just started your digestive enzymes. This won't apply to everybody. And if you're unsure, always talk to your medical team if you've been given different advice, okay? But generally speaking, the starting amount we'd say is 3 capsules with a meal and 2 capsules with a snack, a pudding, or a nourishing drink. So the starting dose, I know the numbers sound quite a lot. If you think 3 capsules and they're 25,000 units a capsule each, it sounds, you start getting into 75,000, 100,000. The numbers sound massive. But just to reassure you, your pancreas, if it's working as it should, can produce 750,000 units of how we sort of talk about these digestive enzymes in units per meal. So they could produce 750,000 units. So when you put that into perspective of 75,000 units for a meal, it stops sounding like quite a big scary number. We tend to suggest starting with this, as this seems to be a dose that most people tolerate really well, and it's a dose where most people's symptoms start resolving. So, as I said, the main headlines is 3 capsules with a meal, 2 capsules with a snack. It's really important that you take the capsules with a cold drink. So it doesn't have to be water, it could be juice, it could be squash, it could be cold tea, it could be milk, anything you want to take it with, as long as it's cold. And the reason for that is if you take it with soup or a hot coffee, for example, the tablets will break down before they get where they need to go. So we need these tablets to arrive whole at your small intestine, so they stay as capsules the whole way through your stomach until they hit your small intestine, because that's where, if your pancreas was working properly, those digestive enzymes will get released. So by taking it with a cold drink, you'll help that capsule get where it needs to go properly. The other thing that's really important when taking digestive enzymes is spreading it out throughout whatever you're eating. So by that, I mean, if you were taking 3 with a meal, you'd take 1 capsule at the beginning of your meal with a cold drink. You'd take 1 capsule in the middle of your meal, again with a cold drink, and 1 capsule towards the end of your meal. What that does is it helps dose for each part of your meal. So it helps those digestive enzymes hit all of those different parts of food and break all the food apart really evenly. So I know some of my patients before have been advised, oh, try and get all the capsules out the way, take them all at the beginning or take them all at the end. But what we want is for those digestive enzymes to mix with your food as well as possible to break all the food apart really evenly. If you take all the capsules at once, either before or after, they won't mix with your food properly. So they won't be doing the job that they're supposed to. So some people, even if they're taking enough tablets, they might not get any of the benefits of those tablets. Their symptoms might be the same because those tablets are not mixing with their food properly. So I hope that all makes sense. And just before we move on, I'm just going to ask Jeni and Nicci if they want to jump in and say anything about that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Sarah, we hear a variation on the sport line of how people have been told to take the enzymes and what works for them. I think often people may not know that they can increase their dose. So there's some hesitation about that. but they're, if they're still experiencing symptoms, that's the first thing that we would encourage people to try in that instance, is to increase that dose, like you say, and spreading that out through the meal to see if that improves. And more often than not, it is because perhaps they're not taking enough enzymes. But I think you're right in what you said about those numbers. It can be quite frightening, can't it? To when we're talking about thousands, but in the grand scheme of it, it really is, what a healthy pancreas would produce normally. Yeah, I think that's a really important take-home message from today, actually, is having the knowledge and confidence to be able to take more Creon when you need it, or other types of PERT.
Yes, absolutely. I would agree. I think once people get to become familiar with Creon and how much benefit it's going to give to them, they will, readily be able to increase it with that sort of ease, knowing that there's no issue with increasing it. They're not going to cause any issue for themselves or any problems. And that there isn't really a dose where we would say stop at that dose. The dose is increased as per how your symptoms are responding. So if your symptoms are responding really well, that's great. Maybe that's the dose for you for that given time. And sometimes you may have a time where the dose is fine, and then suddenly you start to get symptoms again, and that's just the nature of your body. You just might need a little bit more as time goes on. So always be aware that you can take more Creon without causing yourself any problems.
Thanks very much, guys. Yeah, I completely agree. It's really important to know you can't overdose on these tablets. And often, as I said, that starting dose that you get recommended is the very, very baseline. So often people need more, and they might need more. It might work well for them initially, and they might need more in the future. And it's just something to be aware of. So thanks very much, guys. So moving on to the food side of things. So what food should I eat or avoid eating if I've been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer? So this section often surprises people because they expect me to trot out lots of things about salad. What's really important when you've got pancreatic cancer is your body probably won't be digesting your food properly. And it probably might not have been doing that for quite a long time. So lots of people will have lost lots of weight. And if you lose weight, you're going to lose energy, and you're also going to lose concentration power. So those are the really big things we want to avoid you losing. So it's really important you focus on high energy, high fat, high protein foods. So your cream cakes, your biscuits, your ice creams, especially in this gorgeous weather we've been having, your cheese and crackers, your sausage rolls, your samosas, your mixed nuts, anything that's easy to eat, that's comforting and familiar, and that is high energy, high protein. If you're struggling a lot with your appetite, which we know lots of people do, unfortunately, because if you have lots of bloating, you're feeling very sick after meals, it's natural to not have that appetite. So while you're building up your digestive enzymes, or they're doing further investigations or whatever it may be, until they've got your symptoms under control, you might be offered supplement drinks. So mostly in the UK, you'll be offered things like 40 sips or Ensures or Ames drinks, and they will help maintain your weight and your strength and your concentration as well. You will need digestive enzymes to help with these drinks. So if you're prescribed a 40 sip, for example, or an Ensure, you will need to treat it like a milky drink. So you'll need to take at least 2 capsules with each bottle of supplement drink, and you'll need to spread out those capsules in the same way that you spread it out for a snack. So 1 capsule at the beginning of the drink and 1 capsule about halfway down. If you have a diagnosis of diabetes, any kind of diabetes, so type 1, type 2, or type 3C, this advice may differ, but I would always check with your medical team. So check with your dietitian, your diabetes nurse, or your oncologist. But generally speaking, eat whatever you like. It's the good news. Anything, as I said, that's high calorie. So we love calories and protein because they'll help maintain your function for longer. Is there anything that you should avoid? So this is a really common question that I get asked a lot. The short answer is there's nothing you need to avoid. If you're taking enough digestive enzymes to help break your food down, no particular food should cause symptoms. There's no evidence that certain foods make symptoms better or worse. It's all about whether you dose appropriately with your digestive enzymes. So some people, for example, might find that with a bigger dinner, so like a big Sunday roast, they might need more digestive enzymes than if they were just having, you know, a curry or a spaghetti bolognese or something like that. And that's just because they're having more food, they're having more calories, more protein, more fat. So you just need more digestive enzymes to help your body break that apart properly. Another common myth that I see a lot as well in my clinics is people are worried that sugar is either cancer causing or it makes cancer worse. So that's something that I hear a lot. Sugar is the main energy source for all of your cells in your body. So where this myth has come from is, unfortunately, cancer cells are a part of you. They are some cells that have gone wrong. And so, but they still need energy in the same way that normal cells do. So that is why people have got that myth that if you avoid sugar, you can't feed your cancer cells. You can't target what cells get fed in what way. That's not how it works. So lots and lots of different foods are turned into sugars. So for example, fruit and vegetables are all turned into sugars to help fuel your body, but we'd still say that's really healthy for you, you know? So it's important to not make anything the enemy, not making fat the enemy. We like fat. It's got lots of really healthy vitamins and energy for us to keep us going. We're not making carbohydrates the enemy. They've got lots of important vitamins, fiber, and calories to help keep our body going. There's nothing we need to avoid. It's all about what you focus on, what you can add into your diet, than what you can take away. So if you can add in some extra sauce to make something more appealing, if you can add in an extra scoop of ice cream into your pudding or an extra dollop of custard to make it go down that bit easier and to get even more nutrition. It's really important focusing on what you add in rather than what you take away. So before I get on to the last section, I'll just ask Jeni and Nicci to hop in.
I think it's great to dispel some of these myths, Sarah, to be honest. There are a lot of things out there that have been sold and they're often incorrect and they can actually cause more issues than be helpful. So I think it's really key that people are able to know that message and take it to heart and, you know, be confident in saying that's actually not correct information. So yeah, thanks for addressing that. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it's really important to highlight that. And, you know, we do unfortunately hear of people trying all kinds of things like raw diets and juicing, you know, and, you know, in terms of the vitamin and mineral content in those kind of things, yes, that's great, but they're very low calorie. And what we don't want people to do is fill up on those low calorie foods and then not have room for those high fat foods that are going to really help to maintain their weight or, you know, stop the weight loss. So yeah, really great that you covered that today, Sarah. I think that's really important. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. And yeah, it's really important because the more muscle that you manage to keep, we do know whatever kind of treatment option you go for, if you do go for a treatment option, the more muscle somebody has, the better they will get through that treatment, whether it's surgery or chemotherapy. So trying to maintain that muscle is one of the most important things that I focus on. And that brings me really nicely to my next section, is do I need to be seen by a dietitian, and what is a dietitian? So lots of people will have heard of physiotherapists or occupational therapists or nurses. So a dietitian is a very similar kind of job role where we use evidence-based guidelines, and we are it's a university degree to take in the same way that physiotherapy or nursing is. And yeah, we're a completely regulated body of healthcare professionals. So anyone online can call themselves a nutritionist. Lots of people might go on a day course, or they might even have an undergrad in nutrition, but a dietitian is the only person that can discuss nutrition in terms of your clinical condition. So we're the only people that can support you with a diagnosed particular condition, because we use evidence-based guidelines, and we work in a whole range of areas. So I work in an acute hospital. Some people work in GPs, some people work in the community. You'll see dietitians all over the NHS, basically. Do you need to be seen by a dietitian? So that's a question that comes up quite a lot. I would say if you have lost lots of weight or strength, I would recommend seeing a dietitian. If you've been newly started on digestive enzymes, so the PERT, so that could be Creon or Nutrizyme or something else, a dietitian will help explain things sort of similar to how I've done today, but be able to do it a bit more personalized to your own diet and lifestyle. And if you have any symptoms despite being on the digestive enzymes, I would recommend speaking to a dietitian, or if you have a cancer specialist nurse in the same area, they might be able to advise you as well. But often we do a bit of digging on different people's diets and things, and we can really drill down into the specifics of what's happening for you and what symptoms are the worst for you. And then we help think of some ways that we can manage that together. Okay. And quickly, we're just going to go through the 5 top takeaways from today's session. And at the end, I will also invite Jeni and Nicola to put a bit of information in. So the things that we've covered today. So the pancreas has 2 jobs. One is blood sugar control, and one is producing these digestive enzymes. When you have pancreatic cancer, one or both of these jobs might not be working properly. The second one is there is a really wide range of symptoms if your body is not breaking your food down properly. And it's important to remember that some people will have no symptoms at all, but they will still be losing strength and weight if they're not digesting their food properly. The symptoms that people do have can be managed by taking PERT, also called Creon or Nutrizyme, with food and nourishing drinks. So it's really important to remember taking it with any milkshakes, cappuccinos, flat whites, hot chocolates that you might be taking to help your body digest the milk or the milk alternatives in these drinks. You do not need to avoid any foods in particular, but focusing on high protein, high calorie foods will help maintain your weight and your strength. And then finally, a dietitian can help you find solutions for weight loss, strength loss, and ongoing digestive symptoms. Don't be afraid to ask if you're struggling. You can always ask your medical team for a dietitian referral, or you can speak to a cancer specialist nurse about any further questions that you have about diet and digestive enzymes. We'll get moving on then. And so we've got one final section. Who can you contact for support? So with this section, I will be handing over to Jeni, who will be able to talk to you about the support from Pancreatic Cancer UK.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We felt it's important to let you know that you're not alone. So even after this session is finished, we are here to support you and your loved ones every step of the way. If you'd like to speak to a specialist nurse like Nicci or myself, and receive some personalised support, you can call our support line on 0808 801 0707. You can also email us on nurse@pancreaticcancer.org.uk, and you should be able to see those details on your screen at the moment. Whether you have any specific questions or if it's just someone that you need to listen to or you want to offload, we're here to help. And of course, we can also help you with regards to your pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy and any symptoms of PEI that you might be having or anything about Creon dosage, Creon shortages. That's what we're here for. There's also lots of information available on our website, and you can either pop on the website to read it or order it or download it. All of our publications are free to order, so please do avail of those. And if you would like to connect with other people who are maybe in the same predicament as yourself, navigating through pancreatic cancer, or any family member who's supporting a loved one going through pancreatic cancer, we have circles, which are community spaces held on Facebook and over WhatsApp, where you can share your experience, you can ask questions, have discussions, and everything else in between with people who just get it. So please do head over to our website and take a look at PC circles as well. So without further ado, we will head over now to your questions and answers. We do have a lot of questions and answers to get through. And so I think we will try to pick up through them. We have answered some already, and I know some of those questions will surely have been answered in Sarah's brilliant talk there. So just quickly, Sarah, I'm going to ask one from somebody whose husband is finding it hard to swallow so many of the Creon capsules. And can we just talk a little bit about that? Because obviously that might apply to more than one person. And we know that this is something that comes up. And it's very important that people get this right, isn't it? That we don't do anything strange with them, like sprinkling them on food or anything like that. So
Yeah, so thanks, Jeni. So yeah, sometimes your medical team might say something like, oh, just open the capsules, sprinkle them on food, mix them into a drink. The reason they say this is they don't always have the full understanding of how the medication works. The first thing I would say is don't mix it with any food. Thing is, if you have it with a hot drink, it will destroy those enzymes before they get where they need to go. So it will be you adding it to the food for no added benefit. The other thing to think about in terms of if you're struggling with the size of the capsules, because I'm sure Nicola and Jeni will attest, they're not small, these capsules, unfortunately. But as I said, I mean, at the minute, they are prioritizing the smaller ones for children. So generally children with cystic fibrosis also have pancreas problems. But hopefully when the you could talk to your local, either your GP or your pharmacy team about your local ICB, because as I said, different areas will have different alternative medications that they can prescribe because there are these shortages. So it's always worth asking the question, is there a medication that is a smaller capsule? The downside of the smaller capsules is you have to take more of them to get the same dose. But again, it will depend what's available in your local area. If you are really struggling with swallowing the capsules and there isn't an alternative that's easy to prescribe, I would say you can twist open the capsules. They're a little bit fiddly, but you can do it. I have known some people snip the ends off with scissors, as long as you're careful and you don't nick any of the little granules inside. And for each capsule of digestive enzymes, like for example Creon, I would mix it with 1 teaspoon of an acidic puree. So could be apple puree is a popular one, or fruit yogurt. I have known some people who are very savory leaning to do it with tomato ketchup or with pickle. As long as it's acidic, that's the important thing, because it needs coating while it goes through your stomach. So a teaspoon of whatever puree you decide on, mixing those digestive enzymes with it and trying to swallow the puree as one if you can. So don't swallow it, don't swish it around your mouth. And then after you've done that, taking a nice big sip of water and rinsing your mouth out afterwards. So the reason I say that is they are digestive enzymes, and enzymes will break down things they come in contact with. So if they get stuck under your lips or under your tongue, they can cause mouth sores. So they can sort of almost start breaking down the inside of your mouth. So if you are opening your capsules and taking the puree with the granules mixed in with it, it's just really important you rinse your mouth out with water after every spoon of the capsule, of every spoon of the digestive enzymes that you take. But apart from that, you take them in exactly the same way. So one at the start, one in the middle, one towards the end. It's just with your puree of choice.
Yes, and please, folks, don't sprinkle them onto food because they don't work that way. Don't dilute them in a piece of orange juice or milk or anything like that. They do not work that way. The only way that you can take the granules out of the capsules are what Sarah has just said there. So any more information on that, you can contact us on the support line, no problem. Sarah, I'm just going to ask you kind of double question, which is, one is about multivitamins. Is that a good idea to take? And the other is, and you may have addressed this, and I'm sorry if I missed it because I was probably answering some questions, but can you talk a little bit about whether people should be on a low-fat or fat-free diet, for example? I know the answer, but let's tell everybody so they're well informed.
Thanks, Jenny. So I'll start with the multivitamin. Anyone who is on a digestive enzyme replacement therapy should be on a daily A to Z multivitamin. So that's everyone that's taking Creon, Nutrizyme, or an equivalent should have a daily multivitamin. So the reason that we suggest this is it's more a preventative than anything else. So even though you're taking your digestive enzymes, there's still a risk that a small amount of your food would be digested properly. And unfortunately, that's just the way of the world. So by taking a daily A to Z multivitamin, you'll minimize your risk of any nutritional deficiencies sort of further down the line, especially if you had pancreas problems for years or you've been diagnosed with pancreas cancer for quite a long time. That digestion, that bad digestion, will go on for all of that time and potentially before then. So I generally suggest to GPs checking your micronutrients every year, so your vitamins and your minerals. Some people don't need that checking regularly if they're fine, but it can often happen that people are deficient in things that they didn't even know about, and that can cause you problems as well. Lots of fatigue, lots of other symptoms. So any over-the-counter, like anything from Boots, Sainsbury's, Asda's, Morrison's, they all do their own brands. It doesn't need to be the fancy, expensive brands that I'm sure you've all seen on the back of a bus advertised. It just has to be called something an A to Z daily multivitamin. Some people might be prescribed additional calcium or vitamin D supplements. If you are on those, I would always talk to your pharmacist or your GP about starting a daily multivitamin, just to make sure you're not taking too much of your vitamin D or your calcium or whatever other supplement you're prescribed. So I'd just always check with your pharmacist before you start anything new. So that's the multivitamin. In terms of the diet advice, I would say do not go for a low fat or a no fat diet. Do not cut any major food groups out of your diet either. So some people might find that with fatty foods, especially before diagnosis, they might have got a lot more symptoms. And that'll just be because a big job of your pancreas is helping digest those fats, pull them apart, make use of them in your body. If you're on adequate digestive enzyme replacement therapy, so enough Creon, enough Nutrizyme, enough of the equivalent, you should be fine with fatty foods. You shouldn't have any symptoms. If you are having symptoms, it might indicate you need to increase your dose a bit. You can increase your dose without asking a healthcare professional. You just need to ask your GP or your doctor to change your prescription to match what you're now taking. So I always suggest upping your prescription by 1 or 2 tablets per item. So for example, going from 3 tablets with a meal to 4 with a meal, and with a snack, going to 3 or 4 tablets with a snack. Giving it about a week, 5 to 7 days, and see how your symptoms are. If that's completely resolved your symptoms, fantastic, you found your new dose. If it's improved your symptoms a little bit, it might mean you need to increase the number of tablets you take again by 1 or 2 tablets per item. And then again, give it another week, see how your symptoms are. If you increase your tablets a couple of times and you notice no change in your symptoms at all, it would be worth going back to your GP or your doctor or your dietitian, because it might be something else. So there are lots of other things that cause tummy problems or digestive system issues, not just your digestive enzymes. So it's always worth speaking to your medical professional about it. But again, at least for your first couple of increasing your Creon, you don't need to ask anyone's permission, just go for it.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. Obviously, Nicci, you can come in if you need to as well. Maybe I'll address this one to you, Nicci. Well, I can see that you're about to answer, so maybe you could answer that for everyone. That would be great. What foods are best if you're struggling with weight loss?
Yeah, sorry, I was just replying to that in the chat, trying to get through all these questions. So as Sarah said, we're not going to be looking to cut out any food groups. It's difficult to know what to eat, and often people want to try and be as healthy as possible. I know there's another question in the chat around ready meals, but really, the focus at this point is high calorie foods that are going to maintain your weight and that are going to prevent weight loss, because that's the best way to manage things like treatment as well. If you're about to have chemotherapy and you're still losing weight, it's really important that we look at that. So in terms of what foods are best, we talk a lot about adding calories in, so fortifying foods, and one of the ways in which you can do this is things like adding butter into mashed potato, or if you're having some soup, adding cream into the soup, and it's a sneaky way of kind of adding calories in. Another thing that people often do that they find helpful is adding skimmed milk powder into full fat milk. It's another way of bulking those calories in, because when you've lost your appetite and you're not feeling very well, people can often be nauseous. It's really difficult to face the idea of eating. So if we can sneak those calories in, rather than kind of sitting down to a big meal that completely overfaces you, that tends to be the best way to approach it, I'd say.
Thank you so much, Nicci. I just noticed a little comment pop up in the chat. It's quite an important one, which is about taking Imodium for loose stools. Actually, if the loose stool is caused by not enough pancreatic enzymes to digest your food, that is what you should be focused on, taking pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy, increasing it. You should not be given Imodium or loperamide to just dry up your stool, when actually the main source of the reason for the diarrhea is basically that you haven't got enough ability to digest your food. That will also affect your absorption of calories, minerals, vitamins, etc. So it's not just about stopping the diarrhea, it's about getting the person to be able to digest properly, and in doing that, being able to absorb all of the nutrition that is in that food. As Sarah said earlier, we want people to digest everything they eat so that they can absorb all of the nutrition, all of the goodness in what they eat. So yes, that is
The thing,
important.
sorry, Jen, I was just going to add to that as well. There are other reasons why people with pancreatic cancer get diarrhea, and we always look first to the enzymes to make sure that people are absorbing the food properly. But if that is the case and you're taking a good amount of enzymes, then there could be something else going on there. So it's important to speak to the clinical team. You know, side effects of treatment like chemotherapy can cause diarrhea. So yeah, it's important to know that that's not just the only reason, but it is the first thing that we always want to rule out. But if it is an ongoing problem, it's really important to speak to either the doctor or a specialist dietitian about that.
Thanks, Nicci. This is a good question. And I think this can come up quite a bit as well. People thinking that Creon is the reason for X, Y, and Z issue. So it says, my husband has had his pancreas and spleen removed and is having trouble with food tasting bad. He thinks it's related to the Creon. What can he do? And I've seen other comments where people have said, I've started taking Creon and it's made things worse, etc., etc. We hear this quite a lot. So maybe you could just chat about that, Sarah, because Creon is blamed sometimes when it's actually not the case.
Yeah, I completely agree, Jenny, and I'm sure you and Nicci have seen this a lot, is a lot of people say, I was diagnosed, I started these enzymes, and suddenly I had all these symptoms, and I noticed taste changes and had lots more gas than normal. I think what's important to think about is your actual diagnosis. So often people will get diagnosed and then they will start noticing symptoms that maybe they haven't been noticing before, or unfortunately, as their disease progresses, those symptoms will get worse. Those things, or they might start receiving quite aggressive treatment, is another thing. And all those things will probably coincide with you starting a new medication. So probably starting the Creon. So often that's where this kind of idea that the digestive enzymes are causing the problem comes from, is because people won't have been as aware of their symptoms before. And often their symptoms, unfortunately, will get worse, either as their treatment starts or their disease progresses. And again, we recognize it's a lot of tablets to take. It feels when you start like it's taken over your whole life. Remembering to take them every time you leave the house, remembering to take them even if you just have a couple of biscuits with a coffee at the start. And I think people are sometimes looking for a way, any way that they don't have to take these tablets, or you know, that they don't want to take them, essentially. And it is really hard if you yourself or a loved one is taking such a large amount of tablets. But it's really important to understand that it's the disease that's causing those symptoms. It's not the medication. And especially when people start on the medication, it might just mean that they've been started on the lowest dose, like 3 with meals and 2 with snacks. And actually, their pancreas isn't working, it's working worse than we'd expect. So they just need to titrate their dose up. They need to increase their dose much sooner than maybe for other people. So it's really important to consider that when you're thinking about the digestive enzymes. Having said that, as I mentioned earlier, some people just don't get on very well with the tablets for whatever reason. Creon and Nutrazyme have slightly different coatings on them, so on the capsule themselves. So if you're really struggling with the Creon, you've given it a really good go, you feel like it's just not doing anything, always talk to your medical team, because it might be worth trying a different one and seeing if that helps.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Just this interesting question as well, which says, I've diverticulitis as well as pancreatic cancer and finding food a problem having both. What do you suggest that will help me to gain weight? Thank you.
Gosh, it can be really hard when you've got multiple diagnoses of different gut issues going on. And I'm sure this person won't be alone in the group with having multiple things going on. What I would recommend is talking to your dietitian or medical team in the first instance, because they'll know you better and be able to do a bit more of an in-depth review and see how things are going at the minute. The easiest things that I would say is taking enough of your digestive enzymes and making it as easy for yourself as possible. So if you're really overfaced with meals, every time you have a drink, have a snack, have a yogurt, have some biscuits, have an ice cream out the freezer. If you are on your own and you're really tired, get those ready meals in the freezer, get them delivered, make it as easy for yourself as you can. If what you're going for at the minute is sandwiches, make sure there's lots of butter or lots of mayonnaise on that. Add in lots of cheese, lots of meats, whatever you can tolerate, lots of eggs. Anything that you can tolerate at this point is go for it. There's nothing off the cards, as we mentioned earlier. And sometimes people do better with grazing during the day than sort of sitting down to those big meals. And it's just remembering to take enough of your digestive enzymes and taking them at the right points when you're eating to help you get all the goodness out of the food that you can. If you're still having lots of symptoms, having increased your digestive enzymes, and you've waited that 5-7 days, you still have all those symptoms, it's always worth going back to your medical team, because as Jeni said, the first thing as professionals, we always like to blame the Creon first, or let's see how well you're taking it, how many you're taking. Do you need to take a PPI like a lansoprazole or a omeprazole to help? So we'd always go for that thing first, but it could also be something completely different. It could be diverticulitis flaring up. It could be anything else. And especially people that have had any kind of surgery to their gastrointestinal tract at any point, these different things can cause different things to happen. So it's always worth going and asking for some help, asking for something to be explored a bit further with you. So yeah, I don't know if Nicci or Jeni want to jump in there.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. We have one more question at the moment. It's a bit lengthy, so I'll read it out. And it may be one really to come back to us on the support line, actually, so we can go through this a little bit more. But I'll give it a go anyway, Sarah. It says, my dad had to go to A&E as he was constipated for 7 days and had to have an enema. He still has diarrhea and nausea. We're unsure of what's causing this, and he's having 2 to 3 Creon capsules per meal. He hasn't been able to eat properly and has lost weight and muscle. What more should we be doing, please? Quite a lot in there, isn't it?
Yeah, so it sounds like there's been a lot going on for you at the minute, which can be so stressful for family and also for the person suffering. I think the first thing that's kind of jumping out to me is you might not be taking enough digestive enzymes. I would say 3 within a meal is kind of the absolute minimum. Even if you sort of look at it and you think, oh, that's a really small meal or a child's portion, I would still go for those 3 capsules with every meal, making sure to spread it out really well, taking it with a cold drink. Sometimes keeping a food and symptom diary can be helpful, especially if you're not sure about the digestive enzymes. So keeping track of what you're eating, how many Creon tablets you're taking with it, and any symptoms you're having throughout the day, that can be helpful. If you're really struggling with appetite and losing a lot of weight, it might be worth speaking with a dietitian in more detail, or getting in contact with the Pancreatic UK helpline, as Jeni mentioned, for a bit more personalised individual advice. There are some supplement drinks you can buy over the counter. So some people might have seen like Scandi shakes or Slim Fast, or I can't remember any other brands now, but or even just, a milkshake from the local co-op, like a Yazoo or something. Anything that's easy to drink or easy to eat should always be the top priority. So lots of people find drinking calories a lot easier. So any whole milk products, as I mentioned, would be my first go-to. And then just taking enough digestive enzymes with those milky drinks. And then if snacks, some people I know, especially when they've had really bad days, they just go for biscuits. You know, it sounds really silly, but it's whatever you can manage, and your symptoms will vary a lot day to day. But I would recommend having a little look at your diet, seeing if there's any ways to add Creon in, trying increasing your Creon a little bit. And I would also talk to your doctors about either speaking to a specialist nurse or getting a dietitian referral for some proper in-depth digging into what's going on at the minute. Because as I said, you know, me, Jeni and Nicci today are talking in quite general kind of terms. So it's always worth having some more specific advice.
Thank you, Sarah. That was brilliant. It's been a mammoth evening in terms of the questions and answers. Thank you, everybody, so much for all your questions. They were coming in at a great rate, and hopefully we've managed to keep up with them all. But there are some which we would definitely encourage you to give us a call on our support line or email us indeed at nurse@pancreaticcancer.org.uk, and we will surely be able to dial down a little bit more into any issues you're having, and we'll be able to ask you a few more questions around, you know, maybe what else is going on, and just to take the whole picture and not just to take something in isolation, which is another good tip as well. So please do feel free to give us a call anytime you would like to. There's no limit at how many times you can contact us. Don't forget those other resources I mentioned earlier, which will go into an email after the session. Thank you so much, Sarah and Nicci, for joining us to present, and Nicci's doing all the Q&A in the background and answering the chat. Thank you so much. So on behalf of the three of us, thank you so much for coming. We hope it's been helpful, and you know how to contact us in the future. Bye-bye.